This episode of Twin Cities Trekkies is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor before, let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that help you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership required. They'll also help you to distribute your podcast so it can be heard on many different platforms, such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's all you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 35 of Twin Cities Trekkies. I am Wes.
And I'm Kenzie.
And today we're talking about Kathryn Janeway. We're going to be talking about
Captain
her.
Kathryn Janeway. It's like hard to say. Captain Kathryn Janeway.
Yeah. I bet you when Kate Mulgrew had to say it for the first time, introducing herself as that.
Captain Janeway.
She probably had it was like a tongue twister for her.
Yeah.
I bet you it probably was. She probably flubbed it a few times when they were filming the pilot. But yeah, that's beside the fact. But that's what we're going to talk about today is Janeway. And we may include her appearances as hologram Janeway in Star Trek Prodigy. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see if it pops up.
Yeah. Which, I mean, she's basically, you can know what you need to know about her by the character analysis of her in Voyager. So her being in Prodigy is just like an extension of her being captain in Voyager.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So to get in touch with us, it is simple. Send us an email at tctrekkiespodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to send us an email with anything you'd like to say about our episodes. And heck, if you want to have any insights of Janeway that we may miss when we're doing this, let us know. Stuff like that. If you have a comment or if you want to reach out to us directly, you can reach us out on our social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram. Handle is TC Trekkies Pod. You can message us through there. I know you can get to us directly from messages with Instagram and stuff like that. So you can definitely do that. But if you also want to send out a voice message, send us a voice message by going to anchor.fm/Twin Cities Trekkies. Hit that little message button. Don't forget to turn on your microphone and record your voice. But please keep in mind that any feedback you do leave, vocal or written, may be featured in a future episode of Twin Cities Trekkies. Okay, Kathryn Janeway. Our fourth character analysis. We shied away from this for the last few months, but that's okay. We're getting right back to it. So the last one we did was back in October, talking about Cisco. So, but now we're going to get to the next one, Janeway. So, yeah. So Kate Mulgrew was actually not the first person cast. I can't hear you.
Hello, now can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Nice. This I need to replace my headset. This thing is like getting old. I'm like, I'm gonna get cut out here and be like, do not silence me, headphones.
Yeah, I understand totally. Yeah, so Kate Mulgrew was not the first person cast in the role of Kathryn Janeway. What had happened was they had cast Geneviève Bujold as Captain Janeway. She's a French-Canadian actress, stuff like that. So they had casted her. But after only a day and a half of filming the pilot episode Caretaker, she decided to leave. She talked to Rick Berman, Michael Piller, and Jerry Taylor, who were the creators and executive producers, saying, I can't do this. 18-hour days are too much. And that is it. And that was that.
I'm glad that it worked out that way, because I just don't think I could picture anyone else as Kathryn Janeway than Kate Mulgrew.
Her footage, there is footage on the first season box set of Voyager of Genevieve Bujold playing Janeway, which at the time was named Nicole Janeway, which, made sense, with Bujold playing the character. They could have said Captain Nicole Janeway of the Starship Voyager. So that is what happened. After Bujold had left, they had spent another 2 weeks trying to find the next actress, and stuff like that. And lo and behold, it was Kate Mulgrew.
Thank goodness.
Yep, and I know there's some actresses that we know from other Star Trek roles had auditioned for the part. One of them is Susan Gibney, who guest starred as Leah Brahms in The Next Generation, and then Erica Benteen in the Deep Space Nine. They had decided that she was too young for the part. That was why they rejected her, but she probably could have been in the next Janeway. So, but yep, it was Kate Mulgrew and stuff like that. So, and that's the way history has gone ever since.
I think it's perfect for her, though, for the character. I feel like Janeway being sort of the, I don't know, she feels like the sheriff in town type of trying to keep order in a chaotic world. Considering all the curveballs that were thrown at her for her whole career in Voyager, especially, it's no wonder the way her character is the way she is. Otherwise, they just wouldn't have been able to keep order. I've seen her often explained as being emotionless or a bit of a hard ass, as some people would say, but how could you not when you're lost in space, basically, trying to find your way back? And dealing with a group of traitors that were trying to overthrow you that now have to become part of your ship, and you have to learn to like each other. And along the way, you're picking up random new species that you have never met before, hoping that it'll all work out, or maybe not. And then having to deal with little wars along the way and battles with unknown species.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It's crazy, regarding this whole thing, the burden of command was definitely on her shoulders, especially trying to command half of Starfleet, half of Maquis crew, pretty much, and and it was not hunky dory right
and
away,
having just completely out of contact with the Federation, so then constantly trying to play by the rules, because who knows what would happen by the time she got back if she didn't follow rules. And it's here are all the things that happened while I was away and out of contact with you guys. So trying to uphold the Federation constantly and keeping that tight, because by the time she shows up, I'm sure she'd be, interrogated, being like, what the heck happened? Where have you guys been? What is going on?
Yeah, exactly. And, I know that her singular goal was try to get the crew home, and it's try to uphold the ideals of the Federation, still with her crew.
Yeah.
Even though, some of them were I never went to the academy, I don't follow your principles, that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's why I like that she's being chosen for Prodigy, because that is the story of her life, is dealing with people who don't know the Federation or are not very accustomed or don't like the Federation, and having to work with them on that. And that was always the counterpoint that I had with people being like, this is why I like, Picard better, or I like Sisko better. I'm like, but the thing about both of them is they had crews that they liked and that they had already had good relationships with. I mean, Sisko, it's a little tougher because that's doing the whole Bajoran and going to Deep Space Nine and working that way. But Picard had a perfect crew, a crew he got along with and he really liked. and they all had a like experience with each other. And when you take away a captain's crew, it's really hard for them to be a good captain without having a good crew. Like that's kind of the point of being in a leadership position. Like a leader is nothing without like the people that work with them. And so to her to have to actually build that relationship while lost in space, I always thought was super commendable and why I liked her a lot. So I'm like, that's a lot of pressure. And I don't know if a lot of people would be able to handle that well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and during the first couple of seasons, she tries to her best to uphold the Federation principles, while some of her crew doesn't like what they're doing. Especially with her direction. In the second episode ever, she gets a new chief engineer with B'Elanna Torres, but the first meeting doesn't go very well with her. Meeting doesn't go well. But the second meeting, while they're trying to rescue the ship from this singularity and stuff like that, help rescue the ship and stuff like that, they try to they get along and stuff like that, because they're letting their hair down, so to speak, and trying to figure out, okay, why would I choose you as my chief engineer of my ship?
Yeah. And I really liked how much of her intelligence showed as a captain, because they didn't have a Galaxy class ship, and she had to figure out how to like ration and figure out like how they're going to make the trip. So actually going beyond just being a captain, but having to like be like a logistics manager, like figuring out resources, and working with the crew to be like, what do we need to keep the ship running, and having sort of an idea of that herself, but needing the help of others to like keep the ship running. And then having to also onboard people and learn the ship, because there's tons of inexperienced crew. So I just always thought that the fact that she was able to not just lose her mind being lost in space with new people, and part of the people not even liking her, like, then that I feel like that says a lot about her character, and not letting it get to her either.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I know I'm going to bring up more points about the first couple of years. Like one of my favorite episodes is the 37s, in which they meet a group of humans who were abducted during the first part of the 20th century and put on this Delta Quadrant planet and stuff like that. And this society evolved pretty much the same way Earth did. And she meets with Chakotay and go like, how if we have people leave our ship, how many can we survive with our crew? And Chakotay tells her, I don't think we could survive with more than 100 people, less than 100 people on our ship. We can maintain the ship with less than 100 people. Well, and then and she goes, and then later on at the end of this, at the end of the episode, she her and Chakotay make speculations about who is going to go and stay on the planet while the rest of them go, and she opens the cargo bay door and no one's there. And she's like, and she almost weeps in proud, like weeps of joy. And I'm going like, wow, you actually believe in me. I can get us home.
Well, and that's also like the crew respects her so much. Like, and I feel like that shines through. Like, people trust her to get them home.
Yeah, and that's like, and it's and then later on in season 2, in the episode Alliances, she decides, after careful consideration with her own conscience, apparently, because Chakotay, after the most recent attack, kills one of the Maquis crew. He talks to Janeway in the Turbolift and says, "Why don't you make an alliance with some of the Kazon factions?" And then she talks about it with Tuvok, and Tuvok brings up the fact that he was against Spock's peace overtures with the Klingon Empire, and stuff like that. And and he gives her advice saying like, this could potentially work. It could potentially bring stability to the region and security for us. But then when the whole thing blows up in her face, literally, quite literally,
yeah,
it's like the whole crew is pretty much scared straight.
yeah.
The whole crew is like, okay, we're going to stick to the Starfleet principles. We're going to keep that going. And
people are desperate to figure out a way to handle and manage things as like they came up. And I feel like that's something I liked about her, is that she can compromise, but also think really creatively about situations. Which sometimes it'd be like, well, still trying to keep in line of the Federation, but she sticks to her word. Like she doesn't back down on something where she's like, no, I absolutely don't think that's a good idea, and here's why, and we'll like uphold that unless you can prove otherwise. And also she's super willing, like despite people trying to explain her as being like emotionless or really cold-hearted, I don't think there would be any other captain I could imagine just allowing the Maquis to integrate so fully into the crew, like especially choosing one as her first, like her number one. Like, I mean, I think that's super crazy. That I can't imagine how that would have gone with like Picard or something. I feel like there'd be way more paperwork around them joining in that situation, or they'd all stay in the brig until they could decide.
Yeah, exactly. And it's she has like unique ways of handling situations. Especially once the series moved to Borg space. And wait a minute, let's backtrack a little bit. They reached the Necrotic Expanse. It's pretty much a literal, like a narrative and also a figurative way of moving beyond what had gone before. Pardon the pun, but during the third year, the show changes tone and more of a sense of family and stuff like that. It's not necessarily like we need to get home to our families, but then we also got to start thinking about ourselves as family.
Yep.
And when they reach the Necrotic Expanse and stuff like that in the middle of the season, Janeway chastises Neelix for pretty much going rogue, I should say, and trying to, be useful to the Voyager crew and stuff like that. And chastises him, and it's like, you have a family now, you have obligations. And I think it's like he wants to like leave the ship, and he's like, oh no, it's not that easy. And stuff like that. I mean, he's got a lot more. It brings up all this, like, he wasn't feeling useful and stuff like that, and he had this, but he went rogue in trying to get a map, and he couldn't. Janeway punished him for it.
Yeah. And I feel like that's like she always, I've seen her explained as like never finding like a middle ground between being kind of like a ship mother and being a super hardcore strict captain. But I feel like that, like, I guess just being a woman, I feel like I always identify with that, of just like things you grow up with in the lines of like being feminine and nurturing and caring about stuff. It's like, you don't have to be one or the other. You can have both. And it doesn't have to be some identifying factor of you. Like, she like was super committed to people, and sometimes even emotionally committed to her crew, and being a mentor to a lot of people too, and never lost sight of like how people were growing and developing. And like what you talked about, where like people deciding like, well, I have to care about myself now and about this being my family now, and like really focusing on that and making sure people can still grow when they're lost. But I mean, like, just seeing that her mission was her crew, like that was the whole thing that's like different than other captains, is like she was literally doing all this not for like Starfleet, but for the crew to get them home, which is like a little different than other captains.
Yes, and that's why I think that I think she's a really interesting captain because she always comes up with these unconventional solutions to problems, like the alliance with the Borg, to defeat species 8472, and stuff like that. You got to consider that the alliance with the Borg to get that taken care of. I mean, Chakotay was completely against it, obviously, but then, and then eventually, other things as well down the road. What was the other thing like? Well, just trying to get home too. I mean, they especially in the finale, Endgame. They have a plan to get home, but then she waits for everyone to say yes or no to it. So and it's like, and they get home, and then that's it. That's that. They get home, but shocked everyone in the process, going blowing up that Borg sphere.
Yeah.
So, but
there's always the questionable things that get brought up, like when she's had the show itself also suffered from inconsistent writing and very weird episodes where it's technically Janeway has offspring and they're these super hyper evolution weird lizard things that nobody knows anything about anymore. But they're there. Her and Paris have 3 kids just on some planet somewhere. But I mean, it's stuff or the Tuvox thing, that Tuvix. That whole thing. I hear that all the time. I'm like, this is the new trolley problem of people deciding what happens in that situation. And when you have 2 people who are merged into one, and how you decide who's making the decision and who's talking, or is it its own individual and the 2 are now lost to be individual, or how do you make the decision? And I always thought that was kind of a really crazy episode, and I'm not sure how other captains would have handled something like that.
Yeah, I don't know how they would have handled it either. I mean, granted, Archer has a similar kind of situation down the road, similar kind of thing, but that's pretty much what happens is the Tuvix thing. Oh man, that's been brought up a lot in the last few years, especially on I see roughly every 2 or 3 months on social media groups on Facebook or something like that for Star Trek, going for Tuvix, and I'm going oh jeez, you're bringing us up again?
Yeah.
You can bring this up again? Seriously? And it's not anyone's fault, so to speak. I'm not singling anyone out. It's just
interesting. It's a complicated thing. That's why I say it's the trolley problem, because I don't think any outcome of that would have been positive for all people involved. There's always somebody who loses something in whatever decision you make about that kind of situation. You're suddenly prioritizing and triaging whose decision is more important, or whose perspective is the right perspective in that situation.
Yes, totally. Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense, and yeah, I bring that up. It's brought up a lot, the whole question. I mean, here's the one thing I've seen a lot of times on social media. It's who would you rather save, this or Tuvix? And a lot of people say Tuvix. So that kind of thing, because it's brought up a lot. And I guess when the episode first aired, a lot of people were up in arms about it, going, this is actually, they thought this was an allegory for abortions.
Yeah,
I've seen that allegory a lot. People they're pissed off about this because of abortions and stuff like that. I've seen that allegory within that episode of Voyager. Did she really abort Tuvix? And it's oh boy.
And it's tough.
And granted, it's a little bit of a stretch regarding. I mean, feeling that
everybody's sentient that's involved with it, or fully capable of decision making adults. Everybody is sentient and involved in the conversation. So that kind of changes things versus someone who can't voice and like that argument, like try to be like their voice isn't heard, or it's like, well, they're not making a decision because they're incapable of a decision at that point, right? Like type of, and it's like hard. It's a moving goalpost all the time with that type of argument because it can change depending on how you want to define the goalposts of like why you're saying this is where the line's drawn because of these reasons. And I'm like, every time it comes up, I'm like, oh no, it's the trolley problem all over again, the Tuvix problem. Like,
yep.
I'm like, no one's gonna bring up the lizard, like Paris and the lizard kids. I'm like, I feel like that's the one that always sticks up to me where I'm like, what? I'm like, that's a little like nobody record that. We're not bringing that back to the Federation moment where I'm like, that was definitely way out of line of Federation work. But also, like, you're 70,000 light years away from, home, and all seems lost. And sometimes I think people are allowed to snap in those situations. And I think that's one of those moments of like, everything's screwed. We're never making it home. This is our life now. Type of moments.
I bet you I would love to see a sequel to Threshold just to find out what happened. What happened to those kids?
I will Lower Decks. There you go, Lower Decks. Someone go do a deep dive of like finding those kids just growing up, like the Paris and Janeway kids. It'd be like, did anybody ever go and look for those? So did anyone decide to try to find some way to communicate, or is it just a lost cause? Does anybody know about it?
Yeah, because they did a deep cut with Armis and all of the
I know, and I was like,
calling Armis.
Yeah, I thought that was so funny. I couldn't believe that when I saw that episode. I was like, that's amazing. Like, oh, come on, guys. I'm just like, this is so good.
Yeah, so I'm surprised they did. They should. I mean, they've done a lot of deep cuts.
Another prank call.
Not a prank call on them. Just find out what the heck happened to them, but don't prank call them.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, they probably would have tried to make it funny.
Yeah.
So yeah. So the episode. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say this. One of my favorite, like, just talking about Janeway, like one of my favorite like quotes from her is saying this to the crew, being like, one problem at a time. And I'm like, exactly. I'm like, every time I feel like lots of stuff pops up and I'm like overwhelmed by too much decision making, especially just like having ADHD and being like, nope, too many things to think about. It's like, all right, one problem at a time. That's how we have to approach this. Do not think about all the other stuff until you're done thinking about one of them fully.
Yeah, and speaking of quotes from her, I like the one from the first season in which she confronts Cullen and says, it's like, I'm easy to get along with most of the time. But I don't like bullies, and I don't like threats, and I especially don't like you, Cullen. And I like the rest of it. You can try to stop us from getting to the truth, but I promise you, if you do, I will respond with all the unique technologies at my command. Janeway out. And it's like so badass.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, don't forget, also she dressed up like Rambo once too.
Yeah.
John Rambo in the episode Macrocosm.
That's one word that I'd say out of any of the captains that describes her as badass. Out of any of the rest, that's overwhelmingly how I think of her.
Yeah, she can be a badass when she needs to be.
Yeah.
I mean, she does anything. She would do anything. Like even confronting Fear in the episode Thaw. Thaw. Yeah, the clown Fear. So I mean, that's one of my favorite episodes from Voyager is that one because of it's not because of her. It's because of the actor Mike McKeon who plays the clown is so good. Is so good in that role, and it's like, and she confronts that character and go like, okay, it's confronting fear and stuff like that. She had like confronting evil and fear, just like Picard would have done. Picard probably would have done the same thing because he did it to Armis. He probably could do the same thing.
You bringing up that episode just make me realize that that was another actor of like being in Star Trek, and after the fact realizing it because I watched Better Call Saul, and he's Saul's brother, and it's like, hey, that's him. Like, what do you know?
Yeah, what do you know? Yeah. Well, I knew. I mean, I like him as like was it Mr. Detmeyer in the Brady Bunch movie?
Oh, yep.
Yep. Yeah. That's all. throwback to episode 34 if you want to go check that out.
I'm like, hey, another little throwback there.
Yeah.
Janeway is always kind of approaching things like head on and facing stuff like, and she's not afraid. Like I never understood that people thinking she's emotionless, because I feel like she connects really closely with her crew, like really checking in on them, especially her relationship with Seven of Nine. Like,
oh yeah,
like it's just she's so involved in like mentoring her and also just being a friend to her and helping her find her humanity. And I'm like, I don't know how many other people would be willing to like help a like Borg, post Borg, find their humanity again.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people would have done that. All right. I guess about it for Janeway. Any final thoughts?
Let us know if you guys like anything about Janeway that we didn't mention.
Yes, definitely.
Or dislike, I guess, too.
Yeah, definitely. So, so I guess until next time, take care and live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.